to the Spotlight. We have a very special guest on our Spotlight edition this week that we've just recently met, and we're excited to get to know him even better. Mr. Tyler Reed is, and I'm going to say he's an expert.
Oh, I called him Crypto King.
And okay,
You did.
Crypto King. There you go, Crypto King. And I know that's a little bit of a different topic for us on this podcast than what we typically cover, and yet I also know that we talk a lot about current issues. We talk a lot about what's going on in the world, and crypto is a thing. If you don't know that yet, you're going to know it by the time you get done listening to this podcast. And so Bersabeh and I are both very, very optimistic about crypto, and we're here to learn as much as you, hopefully, about where things are going. And so I'm going to stop there. And Tyler, why don't you start off by telling our audience a little bit about your background and about yourself?
Yeah, awesome. So, gosh, it was probably I learned about crypto when I was 21 years old. I'll never forget. I'm actually going to see the guy that introduced it to me this weekend. I'll never forget the day, what we were doing. And I was young and I wasn't listening at that time. I was very young in college, and I was worried about, the girls and the parties and all that kind of stuff. And as most young college students are. But I remember sitting around the fire, and he comes out and he says, you ever tried this? And he brings out a Cuban cigar and I think it was some Macallan. And he says, we're going to have a nice talk tonight. And he starts talking about the money system and how in my lifetime, we're probably going to see a major shift. And there's this new technology called blockchain and Bitcoin. And I was like, oh yeah, typical 21-year-old. But something about it stuck with me. And a couple of years later, I was introduced to it working in the financial services industry. And a couple of guys I was working with, they were mining it and creating it. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And so I started to actually learn about how money works, which most people, they don't, right? And I've always been intrigued about these types of things, even at a young age. Every time I would get money, I'd be like, where does this come from? Like, I remember asking my parents at like 7 years old, like, where does money come from? I've always been interested in it. And so my friends are telling me about it, and I start dabbling in it and start understanding it. And that's when I think I was 25 years old when I bought my first Bitcoin, and never looked back since then.
And how old are you now? I'm curious. How old are you?
I'm 33.
So almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago, give or take, since I've been in it. So I've been in it for a while, and I've never looked back. Because once you understand that they will never stop printing money, and you understand how Bitcoin works, the dollars come in and Bitcoin eats the dollars. I've always told people, the more money they print, the more that money goes into assets, and one of those assets is Bitcoin.
But here's the potential problem as I see it, and I'd love to hear your opinion. Currently, crypto is attached to the Federal Reserve note. And let me just say, for the viewer, if you look at, and let's just talk about the U.S., and we have viewers outside the U.S., obviously, but the same is true irrespective of where you live. If you look at the U.S. dollar, it's not a U.S. dollar. It tells you right on the top, Federal Reserve note. And what that tells you, where does money come from? It comes from the Federal Reserve. And it is a symbol of debt. It's not a symbol of money. Every dollar you have is a symbol of debt because it's been printed on a press. And the Federal Reserve, all the way back, and I'd love to hear you riff on this, Tyler, but back when Nixon disconnected the dollar from gold, what we now have is what's called fiat currency, and it's just an agreement is all it is. It's got value based upon have you got critters coming after you
there?
That's
little gnats. I'm actually at David's house, and I'm out here in the There's gnats
Oh,
That's
everywhere.
what you get for living in Florida. You know,
Yeah,
hopefully
right.
a gator won't come up behind
I
you.
know.
I'll have
But
to tell you when later we did a video. He's got almost 1 million views with me. We did yesterday
Of a gator?
about gators. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll have
okay.
to show it to you.
So anyway, the Federal Reserve note is really worthless. It's only has worth based upon agreement. Now, let's tie that into crypto
Right.
because crypto is currently associated to the Federal Reserve note. It's associated in dollars, and that's potentially problematic, isn't it? And I'd love to hear your opinion on all of that.
Well, the more dollars that are printed, the higher Bitcoin's going to go in price, right? Um, so it's considered a store of value, just like gold, right? And so the reason why I started looking at this versus gold and silver, although I think that there's value in gold and silver and there always will be, I think that people have to understand that we are coming we are we are moving towards a more digital world, right? Everything is becoming more digital. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. We're talking on I'm all the way across the other side of the country with a perfectly clear view, right? I can see the pores of your skin. Like it's that clear. It's amazing the technology that we have today. And so it's only going to get more advanced with artificial intelligence, right? It's only going to get more advanced. And so what happens to our money? Our money is going to most likely, we could go back to the agrarian ages and you can never say never, right? But if we keep going on this trajectory, we're going to have complete digital money. I mean, when was the last time you went to a sporting event, right? You can't use cash anymore. Go to a major sporting event, do not accept cash, no matter where you go in the country. Everything is digital. And so if we go digital and this technology is it just this we kind of got to go back a little bit so I can really explain this, but you have something called blockchain.
Hmm.
And blockchain essentially is just a digital ledger that's not controlled by one entity, at least the Bitcoin blockchain. There's other types of blockchains that you can control, but the Bitcoin blockchain is a decentralized blockchain with what they call nodes. And these nodes are all over the world and they're verifying the transaction. So so it's very, very decentralized. And you can go down the road of how one day it could not be, but I think that that's not going to. I don't think that's going to happen. There's too
I
many nodes
think
for it to
I
not
think
be.
there's been conversations or attempts by the current administration to put some controls on that. Hasn't that happened? I mean, it hasn't happened,
Yeah,
but there's been
kind
conversation.
of. They're trying to put controls on the energy usage so that they can tax it, because the government wants to get their hands inside of every pocket that they can, right? But not necessarily to stop it, because if you stop it, what'll happen? The same thing happens with business. When you overtax and overregulate, then businesses leave and they went to China, right? And then China, they're against it because China's against freedom, essentially. They're a communist country. And so the same thing with China. They banned Bitcoin. Well, then guess what? All those miners went to different countries that were okay with it. So all they have to do is move their technology and their rigs to a country that's okay with it. So you can't really get rid of it. You're just going to have to move it, right? And I don't think the U.S. is going to. I don't think that they're dumb enough to do that. But coming back to the whole blockchain and what your question, going back to your question, essentially, yes, you're right. It is tied to the dollar right now. But if we are going to be an ever increasing digital world, and eventually we're going to have only digital currency, then we go down the road of a central bank digital currency, which is there's good and bad to that. But how do you tie your money to something again? It's inevitable that someday we're going to have to tie our money to something that is like gold. But how can you tie digital currency to gold? Why would we go backwards in time and say, hey, let's, and I've heard this argument with people all the time, especially people that are above the age of 50. They argue with me that we should go back to the gold standard, right? Well, why would we go back to the gold standard when we're in a completely digital world, right? It doesn't make any sense. So what about Bitcoin? Bitcoin works the same way gold does. The only difference between gold and Bitcoin is that one one you can hold in your hands, right? It's the tangibility of it.
Right.
That's it. There's no
Yeah.
other difference. Every other property that makes gold what it is, that gives gold value, right? Same thing with Bitcoin. And I could argue that you could hold Bitcoin in your hand too, because I can hold it on my phone. I can hold it on a ledger. We talked about that when we first met. So the tangibility of it is probably the least most important thing about it, right? The most important thing about having your money tied to something is that you can't make more of it, right? And that's why gold worked so well until we started to overspend. And then we had to print dollars, which then we severed ties from gold. Well, the hope is that someday we have something called the Bitcoin standard, which for your viewers, if they want to learn more in depth about this, they should look at a book called the Bitcoin Standard. You can maybe put a link in there or something to check it out, because that's a very, very, very good book to understand everything that we're talking about and the history of money from when it started from bartering to spices, goods, bartering to precious metals to fiat, which is what we have today, to digital dollars, to then hopefully Bitcoin and different cryptos. So yeah, you're right in a sense, but at the same time, if we go down this road, you're going to have to tie your money to something eventually. And why not tie it to Bitcoin? There's only ever going to be 21 million of them. It's embedded in the code. And that's where people get confused because they don't understand the technology. And even for myself, that's been in it for almost 10 years, I have a hard time explaining the intricacies of blockchain technology. And that would take a good hour for us to just talk about. We don't have enough time for that. Yeah. But essentially, if you understood it, if you understand that there can never be any more Bitcoin than the 21 million that is there, that is being created as time goes on, you can understand. When you understand the gold standard, you can understand why that may work. So that's how I'd answer that.
Not be reprogrammed though, at some point.
No, so you'd have to have something called a 51% attack in order to reprogram it. And what that essentially means,
that,
yeah. So what that essentially means is you have all these nodes all over the world, right? I mean, there's millions of nodes. Nodes are just hubs, and they run the network. They verify every transaction happening on the blockchain. And so this is why the Bitcoin blockchain has never been hacked before, because I'm gonna break it down to you where it's crazy to think about, but in order to hack the blockchain and change any of the properties on Bitcoin, either making more of it or shutting it down, you would have to hack millions of nodes at the same exact time, right? So not like within millimeters or seconds, not within minutes, at the same exact time. Now here's the kicker to it. So in order to hack this, right, you have to be an incredible hacker. I mean, like even AI is not able to hack it yet. There's been studies on this. The U.S. government has tried to hack it. They have reports you can find online, and you'd have to hack 51% of all of the nodes at the same time, and each node has a completely different code. So it's not like you're hacking one thing that hacks all of them or half of them. Every single one of them is different. Wow. And there's millions of them around the world. So essentially, yes, theoretically, yes, you could hack it. You'd have to have millions of people solve a mathematical problem at the same exact time. It's not possible. It would have already happened.
Yeah, it's certainly not probable.
Not probable is a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. So if currently crypto is attached to the US dollar, and the US dollar, so here's what's happening with the US dollar. Is that, and you already know this, I'm sure, Tyler, but maybe our viewers don't, is that when we get into the depreciation of the dollar, that tells us that every single thing we have in the Federal Reserve note is worth less and less and less and less. It's continuously worth less. And it's something like, I don't hold me to this number, but I heard that it's something to the effect of it's an astronomical number of how much the depreciation of the dollar has occurred since we disconnected from gold, because gold is tangible. You're right. It's got real value. And so if we're attaching Bitcoin currently to the Federal Reserve note, which has no real value, then what would we attach it to that does have value?
Good question. I mean, the Bitcoin itself has value, right? So you're thinking tangibility, right? And a lot of people, that's where they get choked up because they can't hold the Bitcoin, they can't build something with it, right? But then again, there's something called Bitcoin layer twos that are being created right now where people are building applications and companies on top of the Bitcoin network, right? Which is also going to give it value. But remember, value can be anything that humanity decides it has value. Like,
True.
you know, water. Why does water have value? Because we need it, right? And humanity have collectively said that's valuable to me. That's why people buy it, because they need it to survive, right? There's been a time in history where we've seen, I mean, during COVID, right? Am I allowed to say that word on here? I know how
Oh,
the
yeah.
algorithms
Oh,
don't
yeah.
like it,
Say what you want.
Say
but
what you want.
so during COVID, you saw the value of toilet paper go through the roof at one point. It was insane. And I'm not comparing Bitcoin to toilet paper.
Right.
What I'm saying is that if people think something has value and there's only there's a cut supply, there's only so much of it, right? And people collectively as a whole think it has value, then it will always have value as long as people think it has value, right? So if you take the tangibility side out of it, right? If gold wasn't tangible, right? Well, then what would make it valuable? Because there's only so much of it.
Because it's
Well, there's
rare.
only right? It's rare, and again, the rarity to Bitcoin is what makes it valuable, right? It's hard to get around. It's hard to get around the thought that you can't actually hold the gold. And people say, well, you can use gold. Well, really, what do we use it for today? We used to use it for computers. We don't anymore. So that's
Jewelry,
not really right. It's
jewelry.
very
Um,
jewelry, right?
you
But
know,
really, that's it. What
but
else?
it's really hard to buy a steak with a piece of gold. Um,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly. So if you can get around the tangibility of it and understand the actual math behind it, math, because everything that we do, our bodies, our thoughts, a home, this phone that I'm on today, your computer, your mics, everything was built with a mathematical equation. Everything, our DNA has been broken down to a mathematical equation, right? So if you think about it like that, math is the most important thing in the world, and all Bitcoin is a mathematical equation. And so if there's only ever going to be 21 million of them, right? What out there in the world, and I'm trying to draw the word here, the rarity of it. What is more rare than Bitcoin? Nothing. Even gold. We produce gold 2 to 4% every single year. And if companies and governments came together, they could produce a lot more gold every year if they wanted to. They control it though, right? It's regulated. And we really don't know how much gold is out there in the world, right?
Well, what we
So
do know and what you can dig into and learn is that a lot of the banks are starting to buy up and hoard gold. And I'd love to talk about how banks are anti crypto in a moment. But we do know that the banks are hoarding gold, and you're correct. We don't really know even if the Federal Reserve had how much gold they have. And I'm pretty certain they have some gold, but we haven't done an audit of them, I don't believe ever. And so they operate completely independently. So um I take it, I would guess, given what you're saying, that you're not bullish on gold and you probably don't own any, or is that incorrect?
so I don't own any because okay, as an example, if I were to buy, you know, $17,000, I bought some Bitcoin at 17.5 a year ago, give or take, when it hit its bottom. And I bought a Bitcoin at like 17.7 or 8 or somewhere around there, right? If I were to buy the same amount of gold, that same value in dollars in gold, it'd be worth the same amount of money it is today, maybe a couple dollars more. The Bitcoin now is worth almost 5 times the amount,
That's true.
right? So I bought Bitcoin understanding that, one, market cap, right? Two, it's not controlled yet. Gold is controlled.
Sure it is.
Gold is manipulated and controlled, right?
But
There's
don't
it's
you,
a
Tyler, don't you think that Bitcoin is too? I mean, here's
not
my
yet.
Yeah.
well, I think it's a little bit more surreptitious than that. I think, you know, my personal opinion, I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong, is that it's going on, it's on fire right now. It's climbing.
Yes.
And yet I'm going to say that potentially at least it's going to back down again because there are people who own it who are part of the system and they will sell it off to manipulate the value of crypto. And I'd love to
Hmm.
hear your opinion on those things. So it is
Yeah.
controlled, not in the same way.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'll answer that in a second. I want to go back to what we were just talking about. The reason why I chose Bitcoin over gold and why I don't own gold yet, and the key word is yet. I will own gold, but I just figured if I can get a 5, 10, and 15x on my money versus 10% on my money, well, then why wouldn't I do that? And then when I go to take my profits in dollars, then I will put a portion of it into gold because I think that eventually we're not going to go to a Bitcoin standard right away. I think eventually the world's going to turn to a basket of goods, gold, silver, oil, Bitcoin, right? You talk about the BRICS nations, right? Something along those lines where the dollar is tied to multiple assets, right? Not just one. And then over time, I think we will slowly transition over to Bitcoin. At least that's my hopes. And that's why you got to read that book. But to back to answering your question, and you'll have to edit this part because I totally asked me the question again, so I can answer it correctly.
Okay.
Um, was it the question? We don't need to edit it. But was it the question about Bitcoin being controlled in a different way?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Controlled?
So in terms
Because
of it being
people, if
controlled,
someone's
yeah,
if Elon Musk, for instance, dumped a big load of Bitcoin, I mean, and this is happening. We know that Jeff Bezos has dumped billions of dollars of stock in Amazon, and we have a whole lot of other references, and there's a reason why that's happening, and so if someone who is a big owner, and I just said Musk, I don't know if he still is or not. I know he was kind of into it for a while. Then it's kind of like the stock market. Everybody goes, "Oh my God,
Mm.
it's going down. Maybe I should sell. I should sell because people panic."
yeah. No, you're right. It does have somewhat control in that sense where they can manipulate it, right? When I say control with gold, they've suppressed the price, is what I mean,
Sure, they have.
right? Whereas Bitcoin, they could probably suppress the price now, but I think there's a huge upside before they start to suppress it. Now, do I agree with you that there will be a major pullback at some point? Absolutely, right? And I think it's going to be major, like 50, 60, 70%. I think that, and we're just talking about Bitcoin. There's 10,000 more cryptocurrencies. I own 45 different cryptocurrencies,
Wow.
right? So yes, I think that I tell my following all the time, guys, just so you know, within the next year and a half, you're probably going to see your portfolio drop 90% if you don't take profits, right? Because we're in this, I would call it a bubble. You got to think, I compare it to the stock market in the early 2000s. Now I was only 10 years old, right? But and I didn't pay attention to it obviously then, but you guys may have remembered the Clinton era where we had the internet boom, the dot-com bubble, and
Mm.
and how many internet companies came about and had all this value, millions of dollars, billions of dollars in valuation based on nothing but speculation,
Right.
right? Well, that's where we are in crypto today. And yes, things will get overbought, right? Just like things get oversold. And Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies will undoubtedly get overbought again, and we'll see a massive correction. And that correction, what happens? I explain to my viewers all the time that there's a system behind it, and what they do is they'll buy it all up, right? They'll get their position, and then they will advertise it to you and I, the retail investor. They will get us to FOMO in, like we're going to miss out on all these gains. And then at some point, they'll take the rug and they'll pull it out from right underneath us,
Mm.
right? And then everybody will start dumping and selling. And then what will they do? They will then buy it up again at a cheaper price and repeat the cycle. So yes, I do believe that. But where people need to understand is that will over time start to diminish, because the more money that flows into Bitcoin, the harder it is to move the asset price. The reason why gold is stable, right, is because it's a 10 or 11 trillion dollar asset. So Mark Cuban can't come in and buy a couple $1 billion of it and move the market. Whereas if someone comes in today and buys a couple $1 billion of Bitcoin or other cryptos, they can literally manipulate the market up and down, right? But as the market cap, the total supply, for your viewers that don't understand market cap, right? Because it's not always about price. Everybody always talks about the price of Bitcoin and cryptos, and the price is irrelevant. What really matters is the market cap, the amount of money that's inside of an asset. That's how I determine if I'm going to buy or sell an asset. Bitcoin right now is a $1.3 trillion market cap asset. Globally, $1.3 trillion is inside of Bitcoin. And once that gets to that $5 and $10 trillion mark, it's going to be a lot harder to manipulate.
Wow.
Right? But who's going to be owning most of it? Right? That's a different question. BlackRock, right? ARK Invest, maybe some countries, right? Maybe a few people like Michael Saylor, who owns a ton of Bitcoin, right? So will it get bought up and essentially have somewhat control? It very well could, but they also understand. Remember, BlackRock, they are not buying it themselves. Well, they're probably buying it themselves, but a lot of the money that's coming in through these hedge funds like BlackRock, ARK Invest, Fidelity, and so on and so forth, the money's coming in from their clients. Now, why would they want to rug pull their clients? Right? You got to ask yourself that. Why would they want to destroy their clients' wealth? And I don't think they do. So I don't think we see Bitcoin after we're going to see one large pump and then some type of dump, and then I don't ever think we see another one again. I think it's a steady asset over time because there's going to be so much money inside of it that the volatility goes away. But that's another story for other cryptos. I'm a fan of Cardano, Internet Computer, Solana, all these different cryptos that have speculation that they may be Ethereum, that they may be the next internet, Web 3.0, the new internet built on top of the internet that we have today, right? The advancement of the internet we've been using for the last 30, 40 years, right? Those, I think, are going to get ravaged. Bitcoin, not as much as you would think, because the asset class is going to become so large. The market cap is going to become so large.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for those viewers who are a little bit older than Tyler, let me just say that the
Let
term
me break it down for you.
No, the term FOMO, I know that's very common, but it's fear of missing out. So he talked about people FOMOing in.
I didn't know what that was either.
Fear of missing out. So they're jumping in because of the fear of missing out on something, or jumping out. The fear of loss is another.
What's the other cryptocurrency? Not the one we were recommended to purchase.
Oh, XRP.
What do you think of that?
Oh man, that's a good conversation. So XRP is considered a payment rail, essentially. Are you guys familiar with the SWIFT payment system?
I've heard of it. I'm not.
So you have to be able to transact money across globally, right? And global money gets transacted through something called the SWIFT payment system. It's a payment system essentially controlled by the banking system, right? And XRP has been partnering with banks around the world to then transfer money just like SWIFT, but through a blockchain, right? And so a lot of people, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to tell you something. You guys are going to be like, "Are you kidding me?" So you guys have heard of The Simpsons before, right?
Yes.
Okay. The Simpsons predict the future sometimes in their episodes. Have you heard of this?
A lot of times.
Right. Okay. So The Simpsons had an episode where they had XRP, $589 per XRP. That went viral. And now when you talk to any XRP holder, they're like, yeah, it's going to go to $589. There's this magical number because of The Simpsons. Okay. I just wanted to bring that up. I think it's ridiculous. Now, so because you know how you've watched The Simpsons before, they predicted some of those random things.
Yeah.
But that's just a side bit. So XRP is a payment rail, and it's faster, it's cheaper, it's more secure, right? And the goal for XRP, essentially, Ripple Labs and XRP, is to take over the banking system and have the banking systems of the world transact in XRP and not use the SWIFT system anymore. Now, the reason why they think that the value of XRP will go up is because if you have all this money inside of XRP, right? Well, then the value of it, because the market cap of XRP will rise. It's a little, it could work, but here's what I tell people. You got to understand XRP, the token, it's owned by a guy named Brad Garlinghouse. Okay, it's not owned by an anonymous group or person, Satoshi, who created Bitcoin. Just those of you that don't know, no one knows who created Bitcoin. He disappeared off the face of the planet. The CIA, the NSA, right? The KGB. No one can figure out who created Bitcoin, right? There's people. We could go down that road another time, probably for another podcast, which would be a really good one. So keep that in mind. I'd love to talk to you guys about that. But essentially, Bitcoin, no one knows who created it. Well, we know who created XRP. His name is Brad Garlinghouse. He's currently being sued by the SEC. And what you're essentially saying is that the banking system is going to give up their control and their power to XRP and Brad Garlinghouse. So essentially, they're going to invite Brad Garlinghouse into the club. So that's what you're banking on. Because if without that, XRP is going to be useless. No one builds on XRP, right? There's no applications being built. And other than the fact that you can use it to transact bank to bank, peer to peer, person to person, there's no other use case for XRP. And so I tell people, listen, if you're going to be inside of XRP, understand you're going to be holding it for a long time, right? And it's either going to be worth a lot of money or it's going to go to zero, right? And so when people talk to me, and I do phone calls all the time with people, and they call me up and they say, my biggest holding is XRP. What should I do? And I'm like, well, first off, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do, but let me give you my opinion on what you know how the world is. You got to be very careful.
Absolutely.
Right. So I tell them, let me ask you a question. In the next year and a half, because we're in a bull cycle and we're about to go into a bull run, which happens after the Bitcoin halving, which we can talk about if you'd like, because that's very important for people to understand. But once we go into the bull run, it lasts for about a year and a half at the most when you look historically, right? So you're telling me that the banking system in the next year and a half is going to switch from the current system that they're using today to XRP? No, I do not think so.
I think the banking system, it's pretty obvious the banking system is failing. And, this is probably another conversation for another time too, but there's certainly powers that be that are attempting to crash the system. It's pretty evident. And,
Yes.
and so that's where, as a viewer, Bersabeh and I wanted to bring Tyler here today because it's really important to pay attention to what's going on. And business as usual is not going to be business as usual, and it's already happening. And just as a side venture, I firmly believe we're in an election year, obviously, and I really believe that the stock market is going to explode.
Always does.
No, implode. It's going to crash by the end of the year. Right now, it's doing okay because again, there's a vested interest in keeping it up, and so it's a good idea to pay attention and to think about, what are some other ways you can go about taking care of your family and looking long term, and you can talk about that as well, Tyler, if you would.
Yeah. Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think every election year you notice the stock market rallies, right? And that's the current administration doing everything they can to prop up the economy and make you feel like everything's okay because I mean, let's face it, the average human has a 30-second, attention span today, right? We forget about what happened last year, right? We forget about what happened last month. If our stocks are doing well, if your 401k is doing well, if you have a job and you can put food on the table, right? then that makes the president look really good and it helps his reelection bid. So normally what you see is the stock market rips, and then depending on who's coming in, like we saw two different things. So and I know we're both on the same side of politics here. I'm going to bring up a couple things. And so you have two presidential candidates that are one's going to win. It's either going to be Biden or it's going to be Trump. That's just how it's set, right? And if you notice, when Trump won, the stock market went nuts after the election. I mean, it was ripping. Everything was doing great. If we never had COVID, I think we would have went through some of the best times that our country has ever seen, right? And it got ripped apart by COVID, and that was, I think, and I think it was designed. I'm not going to go down that road with you guys today.
No way. Come on, Tyler.
So hopefully your
You
viewers.
think it was a pandemic? Come on.
I think it was planned to get to make everybody feel like, look, Trump was a terrible president.
Right.
Look what he did to our country.
I think it was planned to get him out of office.
Correct.
It's pretty evident that the election, I cannot even begin to swallow that Joe Biden, who never even campaigned, got 81 million votes. I mean,
yeah, that's
more than Barack Obama. Anyway,
we're on the same page. And hopefully your viewers are too. They should be, hopefully. But so here's what I think is going to happen. And it depends on who wins. And I tell my following all the time, like, that's going to determine when I'm going to sell my crypto, because I'm going to sell 90% of all my crypto in the next year and a half. I just don't know when. Is it going to be the end of 2024, or am I going to hold on to it to 2025? So what I think is going to happen, if I had to make a prediction, and I'm not Nostradamus, but if I had to make an educated guess, I would say if Biden wins, we're going to see the economy take a dump towards the end of the year, like you said. If Trump wins, I think that we're going to see the economy rip into the end of 2024, into 2025. And there's two reasons. The world, as much as we want to say the world is run by presidents and us, the voter, and Congress, the world is run by corporations.
Correct.
And that's what people don't understand. The world is run by corporations. And if the corporations understand that Donald Trump is a businessman and he is going to do what's needed, right, to create jobs, right, to make sure that their businesses succeed. He's going to do things just like he did his first presidency that will help business grow. And that, in turn, yes, everybody argues he only cares about the rich. Well, if the rich get richer, right, in that sense, then so does everybody else.
Correct.
They fail to realize this. At least the left, they don't realize this.
Yeah.
So that's my prediction. And in terms of crypto, what do I think is going to happen? I think that if Biden wins, by the end of 2024, I'm getting out of probably 70% of my position. And if Trump wins, I'm going to stay in. I'll probably only sell 20%, and I'll stay in 80% of it into sometime in 2025. But I think regardless of Trump or Biden, it could be Jesus Christ that wins the election. The monetary system is done. And it's a matter of time. It's not an if, it's a when. And where do we go from there? Right? And this is where we're going to go. Governments are going to push very hard for a central bank digital currency. That is using the technology called blockchain that Bitcoin was created on, but people don't understand that you can create a centralized blockchain that works just like the system that we have today. It's just faster and more secure. It gives them more control. As an example, say we have a central bank digital currency, and this is a way that they're going to be able to control humanity. This will happen. You mark my words. This video someday we'll look back on and you'll go, oh my God, he was right.
You're doing a mind read here, Tyler, because I really wanted you to talk about CBDC and what your thoughts are on that. And so it sounds like you're on a roll. Keep going.
Yeah. So the central bank digital currency is inevitable. It's going to happen. The difference today, though, is that you have the ability to get out of the system. So I call it the modern day slavery system. See, why just enslave one race when you can enslave the entire world through the monetary system, right? Through the American dream, through the 9 to 5, right? Why do we go to school and have to raise our hand to go to the bathroom, right? Because guess what? When you go to work, you have to be a good little employee, a good little robotic human, and do that. You have to be able to listen to your teacher, right? Listen to your boss. And we were programmed like this for years and years and years. We're still there today. And So what they're going to do with the monetary system, sorry, I almost went on a tangent there. You can see that this really fires me up. But so the monetary system, I think we're going to have a central bank digital currency, and they're going to use that to then again control humanity on a level that we've never seen before. And this is going to be we're going to be talking about digital IDs, digital passports, vaccines, all this kind of stuff, right? They call it
social credit score.
Social credit score. And people, there's going to be some of your viewers and some people that will see this and be like, oh, here goes the tinfoil hat, right? But they tell you, they open it up in plain sight, right? You will own nothing and be happy. You've probably heard of that saying. This is a very true thing that they are working toward. They, as in the 1%, the ones who control the world, right? Because they understand if the dollar collapses, right? Well, they're going to be the cause of it, like you said earlier. So let's cause the collapse, and then let's come rushing in and be the savior, right? So then they say, don't worry, we have this new currency. All you got to do is download this app on your phone, right? And we will send you free money. Okay. But here's the kicker. If you accept this free money, then we have to scan your eyes, right? We have to get all your information, right? It all goes on to this social credit score system, right? And now they have ultimate control of everything you do. Not that they don't today, but it's going to be a lot more controlled and easier for them to use. Now, then what happens? Well, that money that they give you, they're going to then control where you can buy and how much you can buy and where you can spend that money. Because now they have it on a blockchain where they can turn it on and off instead of having to go to numerous banks around the country or around the world and say, hey, we need you to do this. They can bypass the Constitution. They can bypass any type of laws that were created. And the Federal Reserve can literally control the actual currency, take your money away if you don't spend it in time, right? Or if you want to use it somewhere else, it will be declined. They will have ultimate control of where you can use your money. How do you get out of that system? Everybody's like, well, okay, I see that. I can see that coming. Well, how do you get out of the system? You understand Bitcoin. You understand different cryptocurrencies that are decentralized, because if you can put your money into Bitcoin, they can't control Bitcoin, which is why they want to buy it. So they can try to control it, but they can't control what you do with your money if it's not in a central bank digital currency. So that's why I'm buying a bunch of cryptos. So then ultimately I can then go buy a bunch of gold, silver, and also Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Maybe you answered my next question, because I was curious when you at the end of this year or in 25 you dump 70% of your crypto. What are you liquidating it into? And I'm assuming it's not the Federal Reserve note.
It will be at first. And the reason being, unless we're going through some type of hyperinflation event, which in that case, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'll transfer it to Bitcoin and hold on to Bitcoin. But if the dollar is still somewhat stable, which I don't think that we're at the end of the dollar just yet, I still think we can print till probably $100 trillion before we really see hyperinflation. Based on everything that I've researched and read, we still have a ways to go. We don't have 20 years. We have 5 or 10, maybe, in my opinion. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be then diversifying my assets. When I put all my money into crypto, I said, what's going to give me this type of return? Is gold going to give me this type of return? No. Is silver? No. Is housing? No. Is the stock market? Absolutely not. Crypto is the only thing in the world that you can put 10 grand into and make 100 grand in a year's time. There's nothing else, right? And this is going to be once in a lifetime. This is once in 1,000-year opportunity, or people don't understand. We're not going to see another technology like this for hundreds of years, right? Like you have the wheel, you have fire, you have electricity, you have the computer, and you have blockchain. It's up there with all of those, right? So I truly think that, man, I got to write a book. I'm going to write a book. You've inspired me. I'm going to write a book.
You should write a book, Tyler.
the new wheel.
Yes, exactly.
The new
but
wheel
what
that's
I'll
on
be doing,
fire.
yeah, right. But what I'll be doing is I'll be diversifying it. I'll have some of my money in gold and silver, right? I'll be buying some real estate. I think it's important, especially specific areas I'll be looking at. And I'll be also buying Bitcoin, because as the market crashes, Bitcoin will crash with it. Say Bitcoin goes to $200,000 a coin. I wouldn't be surprised if it drops back down to 100, right? Because the dollar is still king. right? It's still king until the U.S. government and U.S. military says it's not, right? And so I think that's probably what I'm going to be doing. I'll have a portion of it that I'll hold because we go into another bull run every 4 years, which I want to talk about that before we end this, because that's very important for you and everybody else to understand how the system works. Because it's timed. It's literally timed. You know, to the date when Bitcoin's going to do what it does. But I'll be buying a bunch of Bitcoin, that's for sure, for the long term. I think it's inevitable that Bitcoin is going to be $1 million a coin in the future. And then why would BlackRock and ARK Invest and 11 other what do you call them, financial services firms, some of the largest in the world, why in the world would they be buying Bitcoin right now if they didn't think it was going to go up in value over time?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It does. If someone could explain to me a valid reason why, right? I don't think they can. That's, so
Yeah.
that's what I'll be doing with my money, and I'll have a portion of it in dollars. I'll probably take 30 to 40% of it and keep it in dollars, and wait for the market to bottom, or try to time the bottom as much as I can. No one can time the actual bottom, but I'm going to look at certain numbers and go, okay, it looks oversold. You can look at stuff like RSI and get into all of that. And then I'll be buying crypto again going into the next bull run because Bitcoin is programmed. So do we have time for this? So this is a really
Yes.
interesting
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So Bitcoin is programmed it's called a halving event. And you may have heard it. Have you heard of the halving? Have you heard of that terminology?
I have not. Is that with a F or a V?
Having with I think it's a V. Having, it's like the word half with an F.
Oh,
Having,
having.
meaning
Oh,
you're cutting it in half.
Okay,
Yeah,
cutting
got
it.
Right?
Okay.
It's called the halving event. And essentially what happens, I told you there's only 21 million Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's programmed in the code and it can't be changed. And that doesn't mean that there's 21 million Bitcoin in circulation. Right now, there's only 19 million Bitcoin in circulation, 19 and change. I don't know the exact number. And so what happens is every 4 years, we have a halving event. Now, Bitcoin gets created, right, by something called miners.
Mm-hmm.
Just like gold is mined out of the ground,
Yeah.
and that's how we increase the gold supply. Bitcoin is created by digital miners. What they are is they have warehouses full of computers, and these computers are solving mathematical equations, and when the computer solves the mathematical equation, it gets rewarded a Bitcoin. All right, that's the easiest way to explain it. It's so much more. If I went down this road, even my own head would explode.
Yeah.
Right? But essentially there's a creation mechanism within Bitcoin. And the reason people say, well, why does Bitcoin have value? Well, another reason why is because these miners are spending millions and millions of dollars to create this Bitcoin on a yearly basis, right? And
So is
they
it like
spend
AI?
no, it's not AI. It's
Huh.
literally just a mathematical code. You can
Yeah.
buy a certain computer rig and then you add them together, and those
Yeah.
computer rigs are designed to literally just create Bitcoin.
What?
It's fascinating. It
Yeah.
really is. You guys should go down the road, go on YouTube, your followers, right? Go down this road and go watch YouTube and go watch like mining Bitcoin for dummies. Not
Okay.
even kidding. And start watching a couple of videos that will explain it, and you'll understand why Bitcoin has value. So anyways, so this happens every 4 years. Well, this is happening again, right? In about a month and 20 days. It's give or take mid-April, mid to late April. And it doesn't happen to the T. It happens within 24 hours. It's programmed that way. The last block will be mined, and all of a sudden every 4 years. So when you solve that block, you get rewarded right now 6.5 Bitcoin. So this company has all these computers, and every block they solve, they get 6.5 Bitcoin rewarded into their account. It just spits it in there, right? Well, the halving event cuts the Bitcoin in half. So now the reward of Bitcoin goes down to 3.25 Bitcoin. So the miners are now spending the same amount of money and energy, but they're getting half the reward. And that's programmed to happen every 4 years until the year 2150. And that's when the last Bitcoin will be mined, and there will never be more Bitcoin put into circulation ever again. So what's happening right now is, because of BlackRock and the ETF and all these different companies that are buying Bitcoin, right now there's 12 times the amount of Bitcoin being bought than being created. Well, guess what happens in a month and a half? Now, the demand for Bitcoin's still there, right? Maybe it's more, maybe it's a little bit less, but regardless, it's going to be 10, 12, 15 times the amount. But half the amount of Bitcoin is now available to purchase. So what does that cause? Supply and demand. So the miners say, wait a minute, hold on, time out. I can no longer sell the Bitcoin at the price I've been selling it at because I'm getting half the amount. It's not profitable. So then they will hold on to the Bitcoin. The market will keep buying the Bitcoin, and eventually Coinbases of the world, the Krakens of the world, the OTC markets where they buy Bitcoin, they'll run out. They don't have any more to sell. So then they're going to have to go to the miners and say, hey, these people are willing to pay a premium. So the miners will then start selling it again when they can become profitable. But it's going to cause a supply and demand shock. And that happens every 4 years. So we go through a cycle, a boom and bust cycle. But every boom and bust cycle, you notice that the price stays higher and higher and higher, because more people say, I'm not letting this go. Why would I let this go if it's going to be worth $1 million in the future? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
That is the most fascinating part about it, that if you could fully understand and grasp, you'll understand why you might want to buy yourself a Bitcoin right now.
Yeah.
and just hold on to it. Right?
Yeah.
Forget about what it's going to do in the short term. In the long term, again, how many millionaires are in the world? The estimated number is 46.6 million millionaires in the world. That was as of 2021.
Wow.
Well, if there's 46.6 million millionaires in the world that we know of, give or take, and there's only 21 million Bitcoin, then every single millionaire in the world will never be able to own an entire Bitcoin. Another statistic that's like, when you think about it, and not only that, but then you have other people. Myself, I own Bitcoin. I own more than one. I'm going to buy more than one. There's other people like Michael Saylor that owns thousands and thousands of Bitcoin, right? So you don't just buy one. So really, how many of the millionaires and billionaires and trillionaires in the world are going to be able to own Bitcoin? So another statistic, it's honestly fascinating to me.
That is fascinating.
You can't tell. You don't seem to.
Yeah, you don't seem excited about it. Calm down.
You really need to get it on a topic that you enjoy. So, so this has been great, and we have
Holy moly.
already gone through the hour, and we could probably continue to go on.
That's for sure.
But
yes,
we'd love, thank you so much. We'd love to have our viewers be able to contact you and to follow you and to learn from you. How do they find your work? What's the best way for people to find your work?
Well, I'm hoping your viewers are on the younger side because I'm on TikTok.
Okay.
But not and it's, you know what I mean by that. TikTok is more of a younger generation thus far, but it'll change. But you can find me on TikTok at the real TR. I'm sorry. You can find me on X. Let's do that first because everybody's on X or Twitter. It's the real TR Talks with an S at the end. So the real TR Talks, and then my TikTok is, Javi. What's the TikTok handle?
Yeah.
It's at real TY Crypto.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll
So
post viewers.
Well,
I will. What I'll
we'll
do
put
is
it below
I'll
this.
send you guys an email with the links,
Yeah, do that.
and you can just throw the links in there. And you can follow me on TikTok, and I do a lot of I talk a lot about different cryptos that make money, that are doing well. There's so much more to Bitcoin to crypto than just Bitcoin. And then on X, I'm a little more political on X. I'm kind of in the mix. I'm in the center there. But yeah, those are probably the places you can find me. And then there's a podcast that we just started that's got about 3,000 followers. You can find it
Nice.
on YouTube. It's we just started it last month. It's the Effed Up Podcast. Is it still the? So the Effed Up Podcast. So the FED. No E? Sorry, we just made it. Hold on one second.
Should have your producer guy.
I'm
come.
just gonna send it to you.
Okay.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
send it to you.
Yeah,
And it's- and just
obviously
so-
you
just so
can't be a
you're-
pro at everything. The administrative
Yes.
stuff, you're not that great.
I am not. That's,
and I'm
nope,
not either,
Nope,
so I'm with you.
nope. No, but I'll send it all to you guys. And the Effed Up Podcast is not effed up like you think. It stands for faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
He
But
told
we
us
thought it was
Yeah, you did.
in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, we thought it was really catchy. We had a gentleman on from Internet Computer, which is one of my favorite cryptos. And when he didn't know the name of my podcast, and you should
Yeah.
have seen his face when I said it. He was like, "Oh my God, what did I get into?" Because he thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. But no, I'll send it all to you guys, and I'd love to do this again. And if we could also have you on ours, that'd be great too.
We
So-
we would love to be on yours, and we would probably bring a different topic
Than
than
crypto.
crypto. But certainly we can talk about world events and world issues for sure. Tyler Reed, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've learned a lot. We certainly have.
Yes.
And we'll put the links. The links will be below. They are below right now, as a matter of fact. And just go check him out and follow him and learn and continue to stay awake. Thanks so much, Tyler. God bless. And we appreciate you.
Thank you guys.